Welcome everyone to Ein Sof Learning. I hope everyone's having an amazing day. This week's Torah portion is Vayishlach. And before we get into it, at least on a pshat level, on a simple level, let's just do a quick recap of last week's Parashat, which was Parashat Vayetze. In last week's portion, Jacob leaves Beersheba. We know Beersheba is a land which exists within the land of Canaan, which is Israel. And he sojourns in Haran. Haran, we remember from last week, is a metaphor for the Sitra Achra. But nevertheless, whenever he went out of the land to the outside of the land, he was still protected by the Shekhinah, which was because he was a tzaddik. A person who is completely righteous, like Yaakov, they are protected by the presence of God wherever they go, whether they're within the land of Israel or Chutz La'aretz. Because we know that there's a special protection that encompasses those that are in the land of Israel. The land of Israel itself is holy. So just by sojourning on that land, a person has a certain divine protection. But whenever you leave that land, you're subject or vulnerable to the forces of the impurities that exist outside. But it's only temporary. It's going to be lifted when Mashiach comes, and then the entire world will be purified and holy. So in this week's Torah portion, and that was just a small snippet from last week, which we covered in the video. Now in this week's portion, we're in Vayishlach. Here we see that Jacob wants to make amends with Esav. What happened last week? Essentially, there was a little bit of a feud between Esav and Yaakov. They did not have the best relationship. So Yaakov and Esav, they were obviously born as twins, but Esav came out first. So he was given the birthright. But what happened was that Yaakov purchased the birthright from Esav. Now, how does that happen? How can someone purchase a birthright from someone? Well, if we look at the portion, Esav literally was hungry for a bowl of soup, and Yaakov said, "Give me your birthright, and I will give you this bowl of soup." And Esav, foolishly not knowing the value of the birthright, said, "Okay, sounds like a deal." And so he grew resentment for Yaakov after that day because he knew later on that that was a foolish mistake to make. And also later on, Yaakov takes the blessing that Yitzchak, their father, was intending to give to Esav, but Rivka was their mother, thought that Yaakov was more worthy. She thought that he was the one that should be getting the blessing. And so they conjured up a little bit of a scheme, and Yaakov went and took the blessing from Esav, and then he fled. He ran away as per Rivka's command, as per his mother's command. Because we know Rivka loved Yaakov, but Yitzchak loved Esav. So there was a little bit of a trickery situation going on. So years later, Yaakov wants to make amends with Esav. So here we have the first verse of this portion, and let's get into it. Yaakov sent angels ahead of him to his brother Esav, to the land of Seir, the field of Edom. So this parasha begins with Yaakov wanting to make peace with Esav. He sends him gifts. He sends him donkeys, camels, sheep, cows, ox, all sorts of different animals, ewes. He sends him all different sorts of goodies. And the angels return to Jacob saying, "We came to your brother, to Esav, and he is also coming toward you. And 400 men are with him." Jacob became very frightened and was distressed. And then Jacob starts praying to God to be protected. Before we continue, let's start, breaking it down already, because there's a lot of secrets that are deep within these words, which we have to be very meticulous. With regards to the words of God, we can't just treat it as some sort of a story or a book. We have to treat it like what it is, which is a divine document with absolute truth hidden in every letter. Again, Jacob sent angels ahead of him to his brother Esav. In Hebrew, the way we say this is Vayishlach Yaakov malachim lefanav. He sent angels in front of him. What do you mean lefanav? That's a question that you can ask, because that's an extra word. You don't need to say in front of him. You can just say, "And Yaakov sent angels to Esav." Why do you have to say, "And Yaakov sent angels in front of him to Esav"? Clearly, there's some sort of a meaning that God wants us to know, which is why he put that word. So the Zohar states that the entire degree means the stature, the level of every tzaddik, the holiness of every single righteous person. What determines it? What's it determined by? According to the Zohar, it's on them keeping the Ot Brit Kodesh. Ot Brit Kodesh means the sign of the Holy Covenant. The extent to which a tzaddik is able to keep the Ot Brit Kodesh, that determines whether or not they're actually a tzaddik. So, he who keeps the covenant, so he's called a tzaddik. But what do you mean Ot Brit Kodesh? What does that even refer to? The Brit in Hebrew is referring to the Yesod. Yesod is not just the Sefirah on the tree of life, which is right above Malchut, but it also corresponds to a body part. Now that body part is the male sexual organ or the female sexual organ. So what is the idea there? You can think of it as the concept of circumcision. A person who circumcises themselves, but it's not just physically, right? A person can physically circumcise themselves and still not keep the Brit and still not be called a tzaddik. Why? Because it's the extent to which you're able to direct your bodily desires, which is most prevalent in the Yesod, to Hashem. Because what's the greatest selfish desire? What's the most potent level of desire that a person can have, or an animal can have, that anyone can have? We know what it is. It's intercourse. So a person needs to learn to control this most influential, most powerful urge. And if a person is able to do that, that's the best sign that they have really nullified themselves to the light. So Yesod is the aspect of unification, not just between man and wife, but also between God and man. Because Yesod is the Sefirah, if we know the tree of life, through which the light of God is funneled into you. Your Malchut, your body is the Malchut. Yesod is an upper level of your soul, which you're trying to bring it down to the Malchut. So that's the aspect of the unification of the giver and the receiver. The giver is Eitan Katz, which consists of 6 Sefirot, and the receiver is Malchut, which is you, which is your body, which is the vessel. So the 6 Sefirot are the Mashpia. Mashpia means the influencer, the giver. But the aspect of the giver, which actually hands the light over to the vessel, is Yesod. It's the last Sefirah of Eitan Katz. Eitan Katz is the collection of these 6 Sefirot here. So it's through Yesod specifically that the light is handed over to the recipient. That's why it's through the Yesod, which is the Brit. Again, here we're now shifting to the spiritual meaning of the Yesod, because this is a spiritual meaning of keeping the Brit, right? That the light gets to its recipient. So Yaakov Avinu kept the Brit. He kept the Brit perfectly. And again, we're not just talking about that he's been circumcised, because on one level, yeah, you keep the Brit because you've been circumcised, and a person who has not been circumcised cannot learn Torah. You cannot teach Torah to someone who has not been circumcised. So that is very understood. But with regards to the spiritual meaning, the deeper level understanding of keeping this covenant, we're talking about being in control of your base desires and directing all of your actions, your thoughts, and your speech towards one thing, and that is being a conduit for the light of God in this world, as Jacob was. And for that reason, he merited that not just him, not just his wife, but all of his children were righteous. All 12 of his kids. So because he kept the Brit, he kept increasing in merit, to the extent that he was even able to control angels. Angels of God. He was able to make them his servants, his agents, and send them to make purposes. Why? Because God fulfills the will of the righteous. It's something that we all need to remember. God fulfills the will of the righteous. Because the will of the righteous is God's will. It's not that there's something separate from God. That's something we need to understand. A righteous person doesn't have a will that's contrary or contradicting to what God wants. No, it's because their will is aligned with the divine will that God fulfills it. Because they are just a conduit for the divine will. Now, how did he merit to make the angels of God, the name of God that's used here is Elohim, into his servant and his agents? So on this, the word lefanav is used, in front of him. He sent the angels in front of him. What do you mean in front of him? So now it becomes a little bit more clear. This is referring to the Ot Brit Kodesh. This is referring to the sign of the Holy Covenant. How? Because the Brit, the Yesod, is in front of you, not behind you. We know that in every single body, there are two sides. Panim ve'achor, front and back. Just a quick side note, the word panim comes from the same word, the same root word as pnimi. Panim means face. It's the external level of expression, while pnimi is the internal dimension of something. So the internal expresses itself through the external. The panim and the pnimi are really two sides of the same thing, but coming from two different perspectives. And that's, by the way, for those of you who are holding, why the concept of face reading is something that really has validity. Why? Not that we have all of the knowledge of how it works, although there are works, like for example in the Zohar and different Kabbalistic texts, that you can learn how to actually read a person's face based on the most minute qualities in their eyebrows, the positioning of their eyes, their freckles, the way that their hair grows, all sorts of really detailed aspects of a person's face. They're actually telling them about the pinimi. The panim speaks of the pinimut of the person. Now, it was through the Brit, which is in front of him, which is why it says he sent the angels in front of him, that he merited to send those angels. That's why it says lefanav. Then Jacob spent the night alone, and the mysterious man appeared, and they started wrestling. This was shortly before Esav really approaches with the 400 men. They wrestled all night long. Who was this man? What exactly is going on? It's seemingly so out of place that we're first talking about Jacob sending angels to Esav. And the angels tell Jacob that Esav is coming with 400 men. And then all of a sudden the whole story pauses, and then there's a man wrestling with him all night long. So let's go to the Hebrew of this verse. Vayavech ish imo, and the man wrestled with him. Now let's go to the Midrash, Tanchuma. This man that wrestled with Yaakov is none other than the malach, not just any malach, the head malach, the ministering angel of Esav, which we call Sam. Now we don't say his full name, but Samech Mem is the acronym for his name. So that's the ministering angel of Esav. The word Vayavek, which means to wrestle, it also shares the same root word as dust, showing that they struggled all night long and they raised dust. You know, when two people they fight in a land, so if they're really, really tough with each other, so they're starting to raise dust and kicking and punching and all these things. So it's trying to show the imagery of raising dust through their wrestling. Now the rabbis of the Gemara, specifically in Chulin 91a, they comment and they ask here, why exactly does the Torah use the word Vayavek? And he wrestled. I understand that you want to express that there was dust, and that's why the same root word has evek. The word evek means dust. But it could have said Vayitaper, which means and became dust. Or it could have said Veshahalu afar, which means to raise, literally to raise. Afar is another word for dust. So what exactly is the meaning here? It's known that the Sitra Achra exists. What's the Sitra Achra? The other side. There's two sides to the creation. There's the side of holiness, and then there's the other side. Now what does the Sitra Achra really want to do? What is its goal in this world? Yeah, to make people sin. But who specifically? Everyone, right? But what's their best bet? What's their best strategy? Who's their best target? Tzaddikim. Because when a tzaddik falls, all of the levels below him fall with him. When he raises, he also raises the world up a level. But nevertheless, the Sitra Achra attempts, with all of its power, with all of its might, to lead the tzaddik to violate the covenant. To violate the covenant. When a tzaddik violates the covenant, that's what really dictates whether or not they're called righteous. So here it's saying that the wrestling that took place between Esav and Yaakov was actually for the purpose of trying to make Yaakov break the covenant. It was an attempt by the Sitra Achra to make Yaakov fall before his meeting with Esav the following morning. Now, it didn't work. We know that this is the famous story of Esav fighting the angel. Yaakov fighting the angel of Esav, and he wins. And then what happens? He forces this angel, or this man, which is really the angel of Esav, Samech Mem, to give him a blessing. He says, I win. Give me a blessing. So what does this angel say? What does this man say? He says, okay, I'm going to bless you with a change of name. I'm going to bless you with the name Israel. You should be called Yashar El. Yisrael is a word that has meaning. Sometimes when we have labels, we call something Jacob, Israel. We lose the meaning if we put the labels. No. We have to know, what does the letter Yud mean? What does the letter Shin mean? Resh, Aleph, Lamed. These letters have meaning. Same like Yaakov. Yaakov has meaning too. Yaakov stands for Yichud, Anava, Kedusha, Beracha. These are the 4 qualities of a tzaddik. But Yisrael means something even in a higher tier. Yisrael is Yashar El. Yashar El means straight to God. Straight to God is meaning a central column path to the light. In Kabbalah, we know that there are 3 columns of energy. The right column, the central column, and the left column. Right column represents the desire to share. Left column represents the desire to receive. Central column is whenever you are able to receive for the sake of sharing. So you've integrated the right and the left, and you've become a force for good within the creation. That is Yashar El. The duty of Yisrael is to be central column. Not to be on the left side, not to be on the right side. We're here to see the good, see the bad, and choose the central column, the central path. Now that is actually what it means to be a conduit for the light of God. That's why Yesod is in the central column. And not to mention also Yaakov. Yaakov is Tiferet, while Yosef, Hatzadik, he's the only one in the Torah with the title Hatzadik, the righteous, is Yesod. So if we go back to Yaakov, we'll see that in the word Yaakov is the word Ekev, with a Yud in front of it. The word Ekev means heel, the bottom, the bottommost part of a person's body is the heels. That's the Malchut. But he went from the heels to the Rosh. Yisrael is Roshli, my head. He has elevated himself to the level of Rosh, which means the Mochin. Mochin is the 3 upper faculties, Chokhmah, Bina, Da'at, Chabad, which every person is going to end up learning how to receive them. First, they have to learn how to correct their nefesh. Then they have to learn how to correct their ruach. Then their neshama, which is when they become Yaakov. So they go through the 3 stages of Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, nefesh, ruach, neshama. And then they reach Mochin, which is Israel, Rosh Li. Just some deeper insights. Because if you just look at the words on a simple level and you say, oh, okay, Yisrael is a name. Yeah, it's just a name. It has no meaning. No. That's not a Jewish perspective. Every single letter, not just the letters. Let's go deeper. Every vowel, every melody mark, every crown, the form of the letter, the pronunciation of the letter, the order of the letters. Every single detail of the Torah has 4 levels of understanding, each of which have another 4 levels. There's an infinite level of understanding in the Torah because it's an absolute document. Now, Esav approaches with 400 men to the camp of Jacob. He lifts his eyes and he saw the women and the children and he said, who are these to you? Mi ele lecha. Who are these to you? And Yaakov responds, these are the children whom God has graciously given your servant. Again, here he's referring to himself as Esav's servant. It is worth scrutinizing what Esav is saying here. He says, Mi ele lecha. Who are these to you? I mean, are we going to really kid ourselves and not think Esav knew that Jacob had women and children? Esav didn't know? What? This whole story doesn't make sense. Why are you asking him? Who are these to you? Isn't it kind of obvious? So, obviously, there is a deeper level to this story that we're not getting, if that's what we think. Esav knew from his father is Yitzchak, that the main sanctity of a person depends on one thing. He knew. It depends on the Brit. Ot Brit Kodesh, the sign of the Holy Covenant. But there's also additional sanctity that a person can receive. How? Well, that's through the blessing of Puru Uvu, having children. So when Esav comes and sees so many wives, and so many children, he's thinking to himself, how did you acquire so many women and children? Because there's two ways you could have done it. Either the holy way, or you did it because to please yourself. So that's what Esav's question really was asking. Mi ele lecha, who are these? What is your intention by multiplying so many women and children? Jacob replied, it's not as you had thought. It's not because I'm trying to pleasure myself. That's not the reason for this. The children whom God has graciously granted your servant. God gave these to me. That's why if you look at the word mi ele, which is who are these, is the same letters as Elohim, God. Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yud, Mem. However, the way that they're asked is mi ele is broken up to two words, implying some sort of a separation, an imperfection. It implies that Yaakov did not keep the Brit, and Esav is asking, you have so many women and children, mi ele. You have created a blemish in your Brit. And that's why you couldn't hold yourself back. You had to have so many wives, and you couldn't hold your yesod, and you made so many children. It's all for yourself, to please yourself. And that's why he asks it in the broken up form of mi ele. Yaakov says, not so. I kept my Brit. It's Elohim. These are the children that graciously bestowed upon me by Elohim. That's how Yaakov responds, signifying a complete unity without any form of division. So I can keep going on because this parasha is packed with secrets, with goodies. But what's one thing that we can take away for our personal life? It's the Brit. How important it is, one, to be circumcised. That's the simple level of understanding of what the Brit is all about. But a deeper level, it represents the deepest desire of a person. The ratzon lekabel. What's the ratzon lekabel? The desire to receive. It's that which is most urgent for you. Your most strongest desire is your ratzon lekabel, your desire to receive. Now we have many desires. A person has a desire to be healthy. A person has a desire to have a relationship. He has a desire to have money. These are all ratzon lekabels. We all have many ratzon lekabels. But if you want to sum it up into one word, what is it we're really chasing? Lasting fulfillment. Everyone is looking for lasting fulfillment. Through their marriage, through their job, through their children, whatever it is that they may be doing, a person is always running around looking for lasting fulfillment. If you go up to one of those sky-rise buildings in New York, and you look down and you see so many people, so many cars, just like tiny miniature people running around, taxis, You hear the honks in the distance. Just look out into the distance next time and think to yourself, wow, all these people, they're chasing pleasure. All of these people, no matter what they're doing, whether they're taxi drivers, whether they're going to work, whether they're walking, whatever it is, everyone's running around like little people looking for fulfillment. That's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean it's bad. Pleasure is, in fact, the motivation for desire. A person desires something. What's the root of all desire? It's pleasure. I mean, it's rooted in lack. A person has lack, and he strives to fulfill that lack. But this is the problem, that people don't know how to receive in a way that it remains. So they attain fulfillment, but it leaves because it's selfish. Whenever a person receives for the sake of pleasing the self, which means that they're not keeping the Brit, then that is what we call evil. Evil in Judaism doesn't mean, it's not just talking about like, oh, Hitler, Hitler is evil. Yeah, of course. Hitler is evil. The forces of impurity are called evil. But it's also any selfish desire. The fulfillment of any selfish desire is evil. Why are we being so harsh? Because in Hebrew the word is ra. Resh ayin. Resh stands for ratzon, will, desire. Atzmi means myself. That's the ayin. Ratzon atzmi, it really means selfish desire, or the will of myself. A person who satisfies the will of their self is engaging in ra, selfishness, which is the root of evil. Selfishness is the core definition of evil, of ra. So, yeah, a person can be on a path of Torah and mitzvot, and they make mistakes. That's very well understood. Not to be so hard on ourselves, but to also understand that it's not about keeping kosher. It's not about keeping Shabbat. It's not about what all of these mitzvot. The mitzvot are here for one purpose, and you have to keep them. I'm not saying not to do it, but it's not the end. They are a means to a connection. And how do you receive that connection? It's through transforming your desire to receive for the self into a desire to receive for the sake of sharing. That's the essence of the Torah. Hillel says, the entire Torah on one foot, that which you do not like someone to do to you, do not do to someone else. Rav Ashlag says, this is the essence of the Torah. Not just of the stories of the Torah, but the mitzvot. That includes Shabbat, that includes Tefillin. Those mitzvot, those commandments that don't seem to have anything to do with love thy neighbor as thyself, yet that is the purpose of the mitzvot. They are a tool to convert, to transform your ratzon lekabel, your desire to receive for the self, into a desire to share. Because there's nothing wrong with receiving, but why are you receiving? Is it to satisfy yourself? If so, that's an end. You've just created an end. It's a short fuse and it leaves. And that's why a person has to go chasing pleasure or fulfillment in external vessels. That's not going to work. You're not going to receive the lasting fulfillment if you keep searching in external vessels. A person has to look inside. This is why this world is called a world of falsehood. Because we think that what you need is outside. In fact, we think that there is a difference between inside and outside. The deepest truth is that there is no difference. So we have to look at the world through a lens that this is all inside of me. To reflect. Everything that you see is a reflection of a spiritual reality which exists within you. This is my favorite subject. Whenever you dream at night, it is a reflection of what's going on within. It's not one of those things that you can say, throw all the dreams away, they're all meaningless. No. Dreams, even if it's it's influenced by the food you ate or the thoughts you thought, it's telling you what you need to correct. A dream is a message 100% of the time. Not 1% of the time. All of the time. Every dream has meaning. Because it's not just about the dream. Everything has meaning. Everything is a message to you from God. God constantly speaks to you. It's whether or not you get the message or you don't get the message. That's the difference. But God, He's always talking to you. Whether it's through your dreams, whether it's through your waking state. Which, if you really want to be deep, there's not much of a difference. That's for another time. Everything that happens is a reflection of something happening within. What do you mean? If I hate someone and I see them murdering, that means that there's something within me that needs to be corrected? Yes. It means that you have a mission, that you're here to learn something. Not necessarily that it means that you're a murderer. If you see someone murdering, it doesn't mean you are a murderer. But it's here to teach you something still. Now, I can't sit here and tell you what that means. Each person has to reflect on their own life on an individual level. And every night before you sleep, you reflect on a deep emotional level. You do teshuvah. Teshuvah means you return to the self. You return to your true values. That doesn't mean during the day you purposefully go out and sin. No, but it's well understood that people make mistakes. So before you come to sleep, before you go to the land of Haran, which is what we learned last week, the Chutz La'aretz, make sure you take a pit stop at Beersheba. Torah, prayer, learning. Right before you sleep. Right before you sleep is the most important time to learn. The most important time to pray. But not just learn something simple. Not just pray something that you're just saying the words and not having any kavanah. No. We're talking about teshuvah. Teshuvah means you go deep introspection within you. Cheshbon hanefesh. Contemplating the nefesh, the soul, before you sleep. And then you will have a pleasant ascent upward towards the place which is fitting for your soul, which is where your soul goes every single night. But if it has blockages, meaning grudges or darknesses, which haven't been cleaned before you went to sleep, unfortunately there is a hindrance to the soul to get to where it needs to go. And the next day is not going to be its full potential because today wasn't. Every time you sleep, it takes up all of the thoughts, all of the speech, all of the actions of that given day to be judged. And that creates your circumstances for the following day. So the way you live one day creates the following day. Not influences. It determines the next day. Now, the next day you can still do teshuvah, which means whenever you're faced by challenges because you didn't do good things the previous day, you can transform your consciousness during those challenges and say, nope, I choose to have joy. Nope, I choose to be in God consciousness, in soul consciousness. I am not going to react. Even though yesterday was not the best day, but today is a new day and the sun is shining and I can redeem myself. That is the mindset of a tzaddik who falls 7 times and he gets up each time. What's a wicked person? He falls and he falls into shame. What does it mean fall? Why do we say fall? Because he's kept down emotionally, spiritually by his own guilt or shame over the sins that he made. That is not teshuvah. People think that they're holy for having so much shame and guilt. On one level, if you feel the shame, that's a good thing. On another level, if you stay in the shame, you have totally missed the purpose of what that shame was there to do. The only way you can use that shame for good is if you experience it and come right back out and redeem yourself. Person stays in the shame and they stay in fear and they think that they're lower than everyone. Everyone in today's society, I mean, I don't know about everyone, but the majority of people in today's society, they suffer from low self-esteem. Low self-esteem is whenever you don't believe that you're worthy. Do you think Avram thought he wasn't worthy, and that's how he became Avram? Low self-esteem is the bane of our existence, because we are worthy. And that was the message of Lech Lecha. God said, you're worthy. All you gotta do is leave your land, your birthplace, and your father's house, which are holding you back. If you rid yourself, if you detach yourself from these external forces which are holding you back, then the you can shine. The true worth of who you actually are, the self, can reveal itself and receive the holiness which is fitting for it. And that's a story of each of our lives. We are worthy, and the way that you attain that worth and that revelation is by keeping the Holy Covenant, which is symbolic of your deepest possible desire. By directing it in the cause of L'Shem Shamayim, being a light unto the nations, being a force of chesed in the world, of hope when people all around you are running around scared, yelling all the hatred in the world, all the darkness in the world. Enough! So it starts with you telling yourself enough. It's not about looking out to the world and yelling at them, stop fighting. No. Remember, everything you see is a reflection of a reality within. So you see fighting, you see darkness, you see hatred, it's time to go inside. God is trying to tell you something. The moment you start pointing fingers at others, you've lost. The moment you see and you then go inside, that's when you've got the message and your spiritual journey has really just begun. Thank you so much for joining me in this week's Parashat Vayishlach. Again, thank you for watching. And by the way, the comment section is exploding on every one of these videos. It's become a Q&A. And I am very thrilled by that. Please keep posing your questions in the comment section. We're going to continue the Talmud Eser Sefirot in following videos, and Derech Hashem, which are two playlists which I will put the link to at the top of this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.
Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Adonai Adonai